Hello, everyone, and welcome to Profiles in Risk. I'm your host, Nick Lamparelli. I am pleased today to introduce Paul Gaglioti III. Paul is president of Diversified Risk Solution, a full-service insurance and risk management brokerage based in New York City. Paul, welcome to Profiles in Risk.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had a little conversation before I hit record. We'll do a 360 of your office at some point, but I wanted to kick off the show as I usually do by kicking it over to you and asking you, Paul, what do you do in your own words?
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Nick. I really appreciate the opportunity. So Diversified Risk Solutions, we are a full service broker. Been in this for about 8 years. We help customers solve problems that, frankly, if I wasn't in insurance, I would have never thought existed. So we write all sorts of stuff, from water wells that supply water to fracking, to automotive component parts, to daycares, and everything in between. So we really, take a shot at pretty much anything that's out there.
How did you end up in insurance? So walk us through your timeline and your career from everything you were doing before to that decision where you made that crazy leap and said, I'm going to open up my own shop.
Absolutely. So I got into insurance like most others by accident. I found myself after college. I worked for a business. I had laundry and dry cleaning in Arizona. I went to the University of Arizona. I quickly realized that it wasn't going to work out. It folded relatively quickly. I came back, worked for a family real estate company for about a year. They spent quite a bit on insurance. I wasn't doing very much. I figured it was a cool business. I had known some people in the industry. I proceeded to get my property and casualty license in 2010. I worked for another agent for about 8 or 9 months, and I figured, you know what, this is the career for me. I made my decision at right around like 25 and 6 months that this was what I was going to do. So I started my brokerage in 2011. We just celebrated our 7th year last month, and love every day of it.
Yeah. So what is it that you like the most about it? I know a lot of folks that start in agency. They either, particularly good at sales, or they like the interaction with customers, problem solving. Was there anything in particular as you were working through your career that really attracted you to opening up your own shop?
Yeah, I mean, the solving the problems, I think, is the most fun. Like every day, someone brings a different problem to us. I mean, we just insured our first hemp farm in Colorado last week. So the world is changing so rapidly that these different businesses, I mean, we write product liability for, digital watches that do all sorts of stuff. And when you're really looking at the nuts and bolts of where products are manufactured and what goes into them and who the end users are, you really end up finding out a lot about the stuff we use every day. And it's cool to know that like there's parts that we insure in people's homes or cars that might be 5 cents, but are a critical braking component in their braking system of their car, or they hold the hose on their dishwasher. So it's just really cool to see the different stuff that we touch on a daily basis and how our industry acts as the rudder that is the ship of like the global economy. Without insurance, you wouldn't be able to get a mortgage on a house because the bank wouldn't be able to securitize that investment, or get a loan on a car. There's all these different crazy ways products are utilized to just basically help people every day.
Yeah, that's coincidental because right behind your head on my screen, I have a Word doc up, and in that Word doc, it is a chapter for a book about the insurance industry, and it literally says, I'm going to read it to you. Attend any insurance-related conference, and you might hear a presenter say something like, without insurance, there would be no economy. Some young professionals either roll their eyes or dismiss that statement as self-serving. But it's true, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
What we do, the economy couldn't actually function without the knowledge that if something breaks or if something went bad, there's some kind of financial transaction that can fix that element. How do you go about, you mentioned a whole bunch of really neat stuff like digital watch and the waste well or the wastewater well, however you described it for fracking. How do you find those? That's those are really distinct and disparate, and probably a lot of that is not even anywhere close to New York City. So how do you find your opportunities?
For sure. Without giving away our total secret sauce, because I know you get a lot of people watching this in the industry. We get people from all over. A lot of people find us on the internet. Really, we get a lot of referrals. People talk. I think the number one thing is agents and brokers, people that are on the front lines, is that if you do a great job, people will talk about it. People will discuss it. So we really just get a lot of opportunities from those kind of people's referrals. My best friend, and we also get a lot of people, frankly, that other agents could have done the deal, they just gave up on it. A particular example, we have these operations all over the country. We're licensed currently in 24 states. I'm individually licensed in 40. We're rolling out the rest of the 50 as our platform I had talked to you previously about rolls out for distribution of products. So we really find our niche in the stuff that other agents kind of just won't, go that extra mile. And our philosophy in our office is, frankly, there's no traffic on the extra mile. You usually go that extra mile and, you get a customer for life, and they really respect the fact that you're able to do something that the market has the appetite for. We have capacity, but a lot of times the risk just goes just kind of through the sewer, if you will. People just don't take the time to get to know their insured, which is really our number one thing at our brokerage. We want to get to know you. We want to know what your pain points are. We want to know previous insurance experience, not just your claims history, not just the policy you received. Were you getting service? Do you need certificates? Are you a very service heavy kind of business? Are you a contractor that needs a certificate every couple hours? Are you a trucking company that needs stuff over the weekend because you pick up loads? What are your pain points? And what we found is that a lot of times customers presented with options, not a lot of times, I would say every time, when you're presented with options, it's not an issue of price anymore. It's an issue of what's the right product for you. And that's something we find very, very important. And to your note about that excerpt that you read from, my number one thing, I'm a certified insurance counselor. I could not say more better things about the National Alliance or the institutes. Those organizations help someone like me with very little experience in the very beginning to go ahead and utilize those programs to understand products. And I think that you can sell any type of product in this business. I sell automotive component part recall policies that I source directly from London, that I beat all the big name brokers on to get this particular deal. And I'll tell you, the reason why is I just outworked them. I wouldn't take the marketplace quote I received at the time for that risk. We've been on risk for 4 years. And I actually had the opportunity while I was in London a couple weeks ago to meet the lead underwriters at the syndicate, that actually insures that particular risk, which was really, really cool.
Besides going the extra mile, what else do you think differentiates Diversified Risk Solutions from other agencies? It's a competitive marketplace. What is it? Is it literally you're just going to outwork them, or what else do you think is a differentiator for you?
Well, we work smarter and harder. So for us, we also have a proprietary technology platform we've been developing over the past 2 years that we're bringing to market, that we have a couple key carriers already onboarded to, and we'll be distributing their products in a couple different capacities. So for us, it's really just about, again, going back to it, getting to know your insured. And, I have no problem looking at your policy if it's better coverage and pricing than mine and telling you to stay. That's the best option for you. And I think a lot of times people get into this weird dynamic of just, price, and they overlook the important thing is that, especially as a small broker for us, no mistake is ever acceptable for any insurance agent or broker or underwriter, right? It's just unacceptable. But the smaller ones, we have to be even more careful because, we're not the large, massive brokers that can, kind of like squeeze the carrier to get their way, we're the little guy. And I think, though, there's something to be said about that. And I think as we will see with time and the changes in our industry, which I think are very well deserved and needed in a lot of ways, will help to facilitate a more consultative approach. Saving 15% in 15 minutes, albeit driven down people's throats, is great for an auto insurance product that has 12 variables that dictate how the pricing looks. But when that same customer goes to buy commercial general liability in a place, especially like New York City, where we're located, it's a whole other animal. It's not one of those things where it's like the lowest is indicative of the best quote unquote option for an insured. It's about what's that best value for them. So for us, it's just, it's describing to people why pricing is what it is. Not just what you're paying, but why it costs that. And what we found is that when people actually are told, hey, your price is this because of this, and if you want to go with the lowest price, we totally understand it. But that's a risk retention group master policy that you're attaching to. And if you read the fine print, that commercial general liability policy that you buy, if that policy you attach to has an aggregate loss of more than $5 million across all policies, you have zero coverage. So yeah, that might be $180 cheaper, than our, A+ rated multi-billion-dollar carrier on an admitted basis we offered you a quote for, which frankly is a considerably better option if you just look at the state solvency fund that would step in the event of an insolvency, let alone, the coverages being, there and filed forms and stuff, it's there. So, we really combat that also, is just customer education. Using the technology we have now, we're actually able to spend more time on educating our customers. And our goal is this: we want to give you the information to make an informed decision. And a lot of times, as we know in insurance, we're telling people something they don't want to hear. It's going to be a little bit more expensive than you thought, or the policy you had last year was wrong. It was rated incorrectly, or the policy you're going to buy this year, which we see a lot of times, is rated incorrectly. So here's what the true rate would be. It's a better deal for this. And, we get a lot of, I would say our average customer has somewhere around, 10 million annual gross sales. And we've gotten that way because we feel as though those particular customers, when they remove the commoditization of insurance and look at the true products, often go with the better deal. And for us, we don't really like to compete based on price. We compete based on coverage. So, our real thing is, you're buying this product in case there's a problem. Let's make sure that the most amount of coverable or insurable problems are actually represented. If they're not represented, utilize, that same thing as that water well, which we, insured in Colorado. That particular risk, the insured had gotten a quote that was, not a crazy risk, couple $1 million asset. They got a quote that was less than $10,000, but it didn't include the coverages like all risk, earth movement or earthquake and flood and all this stuff that would have actually triggered that loss. And they ended up going with a correct product. That was probably one of the cleanest ones I've ever sold, to be honest with you, as far as product, forms and stuff. And if I showed it to you, Nick, you'd be like, dang, this is a really good product. But it was significantly more expensive, multiples. But the insured really wanted to protect the risk. So I think as agents and brokers, if we start to, remove ourselves from that, and go into more helping customers, it works, and especially coming from an agent that literally is more or less, except for our startup clients, which is a significant portion of our business, I would say 20 to 30%, is picking off existing accounts off of people that have had them for a really long time. I can tell you that a lot of people are looking for a change, especially today.
That reminds me of, as you might know, I do flood insurance as a day job.
Absolutely.
When I see people buy coverage where they have exposure in their basement, and then I have to tell them, your policy doesn't cover your basement, and it's just like,
exactly.
And it's for a lot of folks, it's a difficult conversation because that lower price is so attractive. And when you talked about, in your example, that that your product was multiples more, that's a hard conversation. Even when they want to, make sure that they're covered, it's like, wow, there's such a big difference here.
Well, and what I found is that, having that skill set of taking CIC classes and CPCU classes to be like, well, here's a risk that's prone to these things. If all these other carriers are excluding it, clearly it's going to be more expensive, right? So I think a lot of times agents need to be, the person that's going to, bring you to knowing, look, there's a reason things cost what they cost. So we need to be realistic with, what we're looking to do. If you're looking to just check a box, sure, I get it, and it happens all the time. And I don't personally agree with it, but if that's what the customer wants, so long as they understand the difference between just checking that box and the correct product, and the correct product was surfaced to them, it was conveyed to them the need for that correct product, that is what it is. And I think a lot of times it's more of an issue of certain people not, just pushing paper, which is why I think our industry doesn't really get the reputation it should be, because we're the ones there in a natural disaster. You know what I mean? We're the ones helping you, when you really need to be helped. Like we sell life insurance. The reality of that product is people don't like to talk about it, but it's an extremely important financial planning tool in anyone's life. It doesn't matter whether you're a billionaire or someone, that's got, it's in $100,000 of debt that's just trying to pay their mortgage, right? It's a really important product. So, what we want to do is just help people. It's the number one thing. And the guys on my team and my whole team, they understand that no matter what, it starts at the top. When we do deals, whatever it is, we collect the right amount of information. Just like when we talked about, the flood insurance, it's a great point. Stuff in your basement. A lot of times I feel like agents don't do checklists. We do checklists on every deal. And it's also a great cross-selling opportunity, right? Because it's a good way for you to identify other risks. We had talked on another call, Nick, about the platform we've been working on. It streamlines all the application process. So, we're asking the right questions in an efficient manner, providing the right options to an underwriter to actually make their decision in the least amount of time. So we want to make that decision. We want to streamline the workflow process from insured's mouth to underwriter's ears, right? We want to make it as easy as possible. And I think a lot of times what happens, especially in the sophisticated product distribution, the stuff that we deal in, when you're dealing with, small business stuff, there's a million places to go. But talk to any agent or broker that uses raters, they're complicated. And sometimes they go down. And sometimes, the carrier tells you have an appetite, but they really don't. So we really just need to find out, where those things all lie. And then from there, we can go ahead and, put whatever we need to do together for our, whatever our customer is. And one thing also too, I always tell my guys, if someone needs advice, regardless, you give it to them. As agents and brokers or anybody in a position where you have this license, you have a duty to help people, regardless if you think that it's a waste of time, at least point them in the right direction. A lot of times for us on like the super small stuff, which we now have increasingly more markets for, we're actually pointing people in the direction of, hey, look, maybe check out an Allstate, a captive, a State Farm for this super micro thing, because, they'll be really inexpensive. And we're finding now, though, that the independent distribution channel carriers are beginning to fill that gap more and more and surface those products to us. It's like we're rolling out products now specifically with some carriers, which, Nick, you'll see coming down the pipe, and one of the emails we have coming out where, we're able to, within our own proprietary rater, get multiple quotes from admitted carriers that basically eliminates the need for their raters. Now, for not all products, right? Only for a few. And we're finding that these carriers are increasingly looking towards, more innovative companies, younger companies. Like we're working on a really cool product, which, we'll talk about offline because I can't really give the details to it now. But when I was in London, I met with several Lloyd syndicates, and we'll be distributing some products on their behalf here in the United States using our platform. And they're very eager to surface those products. I've had the opportunity to demo our app to, Hank Watkins, president of Lloyd's, a couple times over in Midtown. Awesome guy, knows more about insurance than I think like almost everybody, you know what I mean? Like he really has a handle on it, understands what it is. And I think also too, like I love this business. I wouldn't do anything else. It's a lifestyle. I work all the time. My business is my baby. I love all my customers. And I always tell people, we're in the business where, we see people at their worst. So like your house burned down, like I need to be there for you. And when I first started out, I had a customer, he hauled boats, from marinas to houses and whatever, all different types of boats. And one day I got a call on a Saturday at 5 o'clock in the morning and didn't wake up. Another call. another call. And it was the fifth that it like rang through. And the guy's on the phone and he's like, I don't know what happened. Someone fell asleep at the wheel and hit my driver head on. And my first question was, is everybody okay? Miraculously, everybody's okay. I'm like, okay, that's all that matters. Everybody's okay. We can bend metal back. We could pay our physical damage deductible, but everybody was okay. The boat totaled. The car or truck totaled. But, they were fine. And that's really all that matters. And sometimes I think a lot of different agents and brokers, don't want to, provide that level of service. Now, look, like I said, answering your phone at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday is, a little aggressive, right? But at the end of the day, that person just needed to be talked to for a little bit of time. And I think also what a lot of the agents and brokers will say, and you knowing, being in the industry and knowing that, is like sometimes people overshare and you learn a lot more about your clients than you could have ever imagined. So, you get to really learn about people because you're in this position of advice. And I think a lot of times the biggest issue with our industry, and this is a personal opinion, is that an attorney's super valuable to a business owner. Oh, they need their attorney. Their accountant, oh my goodness, why would they ever switch their accountant? Their accountant is super, super valuable. But their insurance advisor, because we've allowed ourselves to some degree to be marginalized, right? Is looked at like, oh, well, they're replaceable. Well, when you start putting a real value to your customer's business where you're working with them to try to figure out what their projected gross sales are going to be and find the right product that'll give them some room to grow if they're in a growth stage at audit and stuff like that, I could tell you those things don't go unnoticed because you're basically backstopping them in at a better rate. And the carrier likes it because the carrier knows that they're getting that premium for that year, not at audit that they might have to chase them for it or whatever. You really can create a situation where everybody truly wins, from insured to agent servicing it to carrier, so long as everybody has that transparent understanding of how these products actually work and interact with one another.
Yeah, we just broadcasted the podcast that had the PRMA, the Private Risk Management Association, which is the association for the high net worth space. And Lisa Lindsay and Azima Hartley that were on with me were talking about how, in their view, the insurance agent is the most critical component, especially if they bring the value that you're talking about. They bring that insight, if they bring the ability to talk about exposure and risk outside of the insurance policy and be able to have that holistic conversation, then it's the attorney and it's the accountant that relies on the insurance person.
Absolutely.
For the information and for guidance and insights and all of that. And that's a really incredible way to spin it, because you said marginalized. I was thinking commoditized, where you're just the price and then the person with the lowest price wins. And, time and again, that just doesn't work in insurance, but we keep falling into that trap.
Yeah, and I think it's also because a lot of agents don't want to go and get all the quotes the market will bear, right? And I think a lot of people need to realize what we're there for. And we're there as an agent or a broker. We're there to make a deal if the customer needs a deal to be made. And I think a lot of times people, especially on a, like I always say, like, 'cause we're small, right? So when we deal with wholesalers, we have choice wholesalers that, we know we're going to service our business because, I get calls from wholesalers every single day. And my first question is to them. I know you all have the same markets. Are you going to actually send my risk to every market? If you tell me about why your hit ratio and you can't do this and you really want to do a deal with this company because of bonus, I don't care about any of that. I care about my customer getting all the quotes the market will bear. And when you do that for a customer, why would they ever go anywhere else? Because I think a lot of times too, it's that grass is always greener on the other side thing for an insured, right? Where they're like, oh, well, Susie only got me 3 quotes. What if there were 7? And for us, like, even when we know a carrier is going to be really out of whack on pricing, we get that pricing, even if it's an indication. And the reason why is because it helps to also illustrate where the risk is in the spectrum of the marketplace, right? What is a good deal? One quote does not tell me what a good deal is. Even if it's the best deal by a mile, I have nothing to compare it to. And a lot of times you get insureds, here's an Accord certificate. And it's also just educating them on, these are limits. They're not coverages. So you show me an Accord certificate that's got a $1 million, $2 million GL policy on it. Well, okay, that's great. And I got to see what the carrier is, so I can make some inferences about what that is. I know the X date, but I don't know, what's actually going to trigger those limits. And I think when you start to compartmentalize and understand the products in a way where you can differentiate between what's a limit and what's coverage, articulate that to your insured, make them their own in-house risk manager. Everybody wins, right? Because they're not going to let wet floors be okay if they know that they're going to pay more for a slip and fall, right? If they need a safety program, point them in the right direction to a trade organization that could help them with that. It's only going to lower their price, especially when you get into really small businesses. Like what I've noticed with small businesses, again, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney. If I ever get, some sort of contract, all I look at insurance requirements and say, you have it or you don't, right? I don't look at all the other stuff. But what I tell people is, think about what you're doing relative to what it is. And what I also like to say for any agent or broker, if you're struggling selling a more sophisticated product, very simply turn it back on the insured and say, if you were the insurance carrier with their money, would you insure yourself? Do you think that's a low risk thing? And you find that a lot of times they'll smile or laugh. And they'll be like, that makes sense.
Know.
Or they'll say no.
They know.
Yeah, exactly.
They know.
Or no, right?
They kind of know how risky they are in a lot of cases.
Absolutely.
And then it's just putting math to paper and showing them. That's something that we try to do is, flood is very misunderstood. So, trying to understand how flood is priced is even more complicated.
Not actuarially priced, as we know, right?
So when we price something, we give, we provide them according to us, this is our estimate of your 1 in 100-year loss. This is our estimate of your 1 in 250-year loss. And it doesn't take a rocket science to take that 1 in 100-year loss and divide it by 100 and say, okay, for that one event, how much premium would the insurance company need to cover just that one event? Now, throw in a whole bunch of others. So I get it. Like I think we've fallen down as an industry. The best salespeople, a few generations ago were all insurance professionals because it was a really tough product to sell. And then it became commoditized. And now the art of the sale is in the hands of very few people when it comes to insurance. So you got to put yourself in the shoes of the customer. If you give them two things that look like an apple and one is half the price, they're going to choose the cheaper one because both things look like an apple. It's pretty straightforward. So I like where you're coming from on that. You look pretty young. So how much do you think your growth and your success has to do with you growing up in a digital world as a digital native, you just basically feeling comfortable in technology? How much has that helped you in forming this agency?
Oh, I mean, I would say technology is my number one concern every day. It also was my most expensive, line item, I guess, right? Operating expense for my business initially. Now it's significantly the most, but, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous when I started my brokerage. I had to give, one of the agency management providers $10,000+ up front and $500 a month for, Internet Explorer based, whatever product. But I also thank them because I wouldn't have started my InsurTech platform without that because I saw the need for it. So I think that, it's interesting because being someone that just decided at 24, 32 now that this is my career, I would not do anything else. We just hired a 23-year-old guy right out of college. He loves it. He gets it. My team spans in age. My CTO's, 44. And, what we realized is that, the technology is a tool. And what a lot of people don't realize is there's actually more options now than there ever have been, period, because of technology. So when someone tells me it's tougher, they're wrong. It's actually easier. It's way, way easier because there's so many different niches you can carve out for yourself in this business. For me, being, what I would consider a generalist, has really helped me to do what I'm doing because it's forced me to find products and solutions that, again, we do deals because people give up on them. You know what I mean? The insured gets frustrated, and I'm the one that kind of, shows them the light and like, look, like whoever was you were talking to, good or not, needed to explain to you this, that this is what you have to worry about. And explaining it, like, with that digital watch we insured, it had a silicon band exclusion. It had silicon bands on it, silicon watch band. The insured was fine with it. If an someone had an allergic reaction, but it was explaining to them why that policy was 25 grand a year, or the one was removing that exclusion was 40. And they were able to make that decision for themselves. And I think that's another thing for agents when they, like a little E&O advice from someone that pays for their own E&O, right, is that, you want to make sure that you're articulating to a consumer what their options actually are, because you are in a position, whether you're in a big, small, or whatever brokerage, if you're in a position where you have that option for them, you are required ethically and professionally to surface that to them. And we're seeing that actually being a big issue with a lot of the insurtech platforms where they get multiple rates and they only surface one. And I can tell you from the regulatory meetings I've sat in on that algorithmic underwriting is a regulatory need, if there were one, because it's very difficult for a regulator to discern why someone paid what they paid based on an algorithm. And as you know, Nick, being in the tech space as well, when you start unraveling code, you know what I mean? It doesn't always, necessarily translate into what it is. And to articulate that's difficult. So I think that the technology is the biggest tool for the agency today. We were in a WeWork, so we do have a brick and mortar location, but we're not like what we would call a Main Street agent or broker. I think that has changed. What I would do with a walk-in would be take their information and be like, we'll give you a call when we have some options for you. Have we had walk-ins? Absolutely. I think they're great. But what I explain to them is like, I can do the same thing for them over the phone as in person. But providing that level of comfort, if they want to come in, they schedule an appointment. You know what I mean? I have one of my sales guys, they'll sit down with them, collect the preliminary information, provide that to me, and then I'll go in and really diagnose it. But I think also what people need to remember is, the people I work with, like yourself, that, I've talked to, and the people that really know, there's so many great people in this industry that'd be more than happy to help you. And I think that goes a lot of times, unnoticed, because the younger people think, oh, they're older, they're wrong. The older people think, oh, they're younger, they're crazy. You know what I mean? But the reality of it is there's so much information exchange that could happen where, like we need to take advantage of that. Like my London brokers I work with, their average experience is 35 years. And it's really cool seeing that marketplace operate, because I'll tell you, when I was walking through the streets of London, went to Lloyd's, went to all the different syndicates, offices and stuff, it was cool when my brokers were getting basically hounded by their friends that they've worked with for another 20 years. Oh, that's an underwriter here. Oh, that's my buddy there. We'll have a pint with this guy later, and that's really what it needs to go back to, in my opinion, is a more, team effort, kind of concerted effort. And that's really what we're looking to tackle with our platform, is helping to put not only ourselves on the retail basis, but other retail agents in a position where they can spend less time doing menial data entry and more time consulting with their clients. We built the functionality in our app to basically compare quotes side by side. So if we see a quote, we look at it, we see what was requested on the application, we saw what the previous coverage was, we see what the new quotes are. It's very important for that, because that also helps to sell. That helps me to explain to you, Nick, why your price is what it is, why your flood insurance in Miami Beach is like this. You know what I mean? You and I had this conversation a couple months back, getting into elevation certs and wind mitigation and all this stuff. And there's all this data out there that is accessible. Now, yeah, you may not be able to get an elevation cert from an insurer because A, they may not know what it is. B, they may not have it. C, if they do have it, it could have been part of their bank closing that's in a file, in their attic, right? We don't really know. So it's helping them to educate them on what those things are. And the technology really just helps because, as we talk today via this video chat, I can see in the background all these opportunities that we have coming in of different customers looking for different options and products. And it's just really cool, in the industry, especially on the younger side, like the people that have done it for a really long time, there's a reason they're still in the industry. We have a very, very close-knit industry. talk to anybody that's been around you, I know that very, very well. People move because company to company, if you're an underwriter here and your specialty is inland marine, you go to another carrier and do inland marine. If someone does a lot of inland marine deals, they're going to know you in some capacity. And I think, it's really important for people to build up that personal relationship. I don't care if you work at a 1,000-person brokerage or, it's publicly traded and there's hundreds of agents and you're trying to find your way, ask for help. Even if it's outside your organization, within obviously the scope of your employment, of course, but, find people that help you, get a mentor. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of insurance mentors, that have helped me to understand what to look for, not go through so many pitfalls. And honestly, you find them in surprising places. I wanted to do a deal, like I said, recall policy deal, insured, I wasn't happy with the pricing. And, I basically went online. I found carriers' Bermuda operations. I was like, can you write this policy? It's, component part retailer. They're in component parts. They have a lot of sales. They're international. They're braking systems, steering systems, critical components. He goes, talk to this guy in New York who put me in touch with a broker in London. And I'm a surplus lines broker. I've been one for 7 years, and we did that deal. And the insured, again, like I said earlier, they're still on it. And that was a situation where I beat out all the big brokers, and they had the same markets as me. They just didn't go to the one good one, and I went to that one and all the others. But the point though is, and like I tell my sales guys too, a lot of times agents are too quick to anchor a price and not read the quote sheet and see what it's based on. And I think a lot of times you save yourself a lot of aggravation by just reading that extra 30 seconds what your underwriter sent you and what they need to do that deal. Because it's not that they're looking to, mess it up or anything. It's the furthest from that. It's just that, again, also what we're handling in our platform is, data being different on the Accord and the supplemental. You know what I mean? So what data do we use? Do we use the higher number or the lower number? But as we both know, that just holds the deal. You know what I mean? So that deal is just going to be in a holding pattern until somebody makes a decision. And that should never really happen. So I think that agents have all this access to markets, and it's the double-edged sword of the monster wholesalers that exist today that have every market and just keep rolling up other MGAs and MGUs and little, brokerages and stuff, is that they have all these markets, and, there are really good wholesale brokers out there, that really do provide a solid value to their retailers. You just have to find the right ones, and find the ones that are the right for your size. Like for us, we're small but aggressive, and we write a lot of random stuff. So we need a wholesaler that's going to understand that when we get a deal, it's important to any other agent, but it's really important to us because, we are really relationship-based sales organization. So for us, it's really important to get an option, even if it's not the right option, because that's all the market will bear. They want something ridiculous that the market just will not provide at a reasonable price. Because as you and I both know, Nick, we can insure anything if you're willing to pay for it. We can literally insure anything, out there. As long as you have the money to pay for it, we can do it. But, a lot of times it's just trying to do it. And even knowing a lot of times that I'm not going to get that deal. But what I will tell you is this: sometimes people come back. And it happens all the time, more often than you think. Deal comes back 9 months later. Look, now we're ready. We did a deal for a large daycare. They gave me a really round number. They're like, your price was beat by $500, and it was like $10,000-$15,000 plus policy. I'm like, 500 even? They're like, yeah. I was like, by a round number. They said, yeah. I was like, unlikely. It's going to be an E&S product. There's a tax, you know what I mean? So it'd be really peculiar that it would be exactly that amount, but okay, no problem. 6 months later, or a couple months later, I get a call Christmas Eve or 2 days before, it was right before the holiday. Look, it's so-and-so from so-and-so. I'm like, oh no, I remember you. And I don't really know how to say this. And I go, I don't even have to say, I'm just going to guess for you. The quote you had wasn't actually accurate. You went to pay, you got the deck. It was totally different than what you thought. She goes, yeah, how'd you know? I go, this won't be the first or the last time this ever happens. She goes, can I buy that policy you quoted for me a couple months ago? I was like, Unfortunately, the quote expired. However, is the exposure the same? Yes. I called my wholesale broker who provided that quote to me. You know what I mean? They're like, the terms are exactly the same. I shot them their note. They went ahead and did it, and we did the deal. So I think a lot of times people just need to just take the time and not say no. And underwriters too. Underwriters need to do their job and underwrite risk. That's what they're there to do. They shouldn't be focusing on, in my opinion, hit ratio. But I also think hit ratio and blocking of markets and all those things won't exist in 5 years. There'll be metrics, but they won't actually be a real thing anymore.
I have a similar story. I underwrote an underground parking garage in Ohio. We worked really hard on it. We actually spent a lot of money to do the underwriting because, underground parking garage in a former flood zone, water only has one place to go. And we lost it. It was a bummer. And like 2 or 3 months later, it came back. I was like, I thought so. Like, who else is as crazy as I am to cover that? But to me, as you said, there's no such thing as a bad risk, only bad prices. So I'll insure anything if I can get the right price.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to ask one more business-related question before we transition over to the personal stuff. Could you describe one or two of the most satisfying moments so far in your career?
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, it's actually, the timing's pretty good. Last week, I sold the biggest policy that I've ever sold. It is 7-figure policy, and I worked really hard to do it. And it was great. It took a lot of work. It was an annuity product that is super specialized. There's only 7 carriers that write it, that have an appetite for it to begin with, let alone once you start getting into sizing and stuff like that, there's literally like 2 options for it. So that would be for sure. That would be one. I would say that, I'm a sales guy. I love, insurance. So like, it was really cool to be able to sell a super sophisticated product that there's only like 60 brokers in the country that, even do it, let alone know about it. But that would be definitely one, for sure. But I would also say, just, seeing the validation from our tech platform that we've been developing and the carrier responses for the ones we're working with. It's really, really cool to see people view what we're doing in the light that we're doing it and understand that, the platform we built is by actual brokers for actual brokers. My partner might be a Princeton data scientist, but I'm the certified insurance counselor who gave him the workflows that I did thousands of times. It was the benefit of being this small guy by themselves. But I will tell you this too, and just like getting back into it, it's on my LinkedIn. It's like, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. I think a lot of times people give up on themselves like right before the finish line, and this because they can't see it. And I think especially in sales, you get all bummed out. Oh, I didn't close this. And, you reap what you sow. And I tell my sales guys, have the biggest pipeline you can ever have, quote it all. Because again, you never know what you're going to get down the road. And people talk. And I've gotten a lot of referrals from deals I didn't do because I took the time to explain things to people in a way where I made sure they understood it after they got off the phone with me. You know what I mean? I said to them, I was like, if you have a question, even if you don't buy it from me, call me. You can find a lot of the stuff online, but it's like when you WebMD something and you're dying. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, you look at it and you see the worst case, and sometimes it's actually not the worst case. And the other thing is too, like going into like you being on the other side, underwriting side, you get it. Like there's no such thing as just a bad underwriter unless they're not doing their job. That's a whole other story. It's just, they're just less, risk averse, and we're a risk averse business. Like that's our job, is to, indemnify risk. Right. So, when you look at what it is, it's just like sometimes underwriters are just not, they're not gamblers. Some are, and that there's a double-edged sword to that too. Right. So you want to find the right carriers to match the right risks that you're doing. And we've been able to find that. So I would say those are like dovetail into the 1 or 2 most satisfying moments we've had.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Before we go to the personal questions, can you give us a little tour? So if you're listening to the podcast, go over to the YouTube video and you can see an InsurTech brokerage in action with lots of papers. And
everybody went home. Yeah. Yeah. There's not really much paper unless it was Word. That was like our workflows, and you can see our beautiful vacant lot in Soho across the street. our great our great view and my very important money tree that keeps it going. And then we had a couple guys sitting behind me there, but yep,
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that.
I got it.
Let's play a little wordplay game.
Sure.
I'm going to throw out a word or a phrase and just give me the first things that pop into your head.
Sure.
Okay? CPCU versus CIC.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, please?
CPCU versus CIC. The designation.
The CPCU said, yeah. They're great. I mean, like I could say a million things. Great. The classes are, I think they should be required. Personally, I think that it should be I think we should have a graduated licensing requirement for products, and not all those classes, but I think that they should be required to at least sell to insurance.
Yeah. Hemp insurance, cannabis insurance.
We just did our first hemp farm in Colorado last week. So it's there. It's not going anywhere. Carriers are opening appetite. When I was in London, it's a very big topic for a lot of different places. So complicated, unique, but not going anywhere for sure.
Yeah, that's that was a little self-serving. Someone actually approached me, or at least asked about, hey, have you thought about cannabis and flood insurance? And I'm like, no, not at all. I've never put those two together. But you know what? I'm gonna start thinking about it. It might take
Does
a
crop cover flood?
What's
Do you
that?
know that? I haven't done crop insurance. We insured the operations. Does crop cover flood? Is that all risk policy?
I have no idea. Someone was asking me, so I'm assuming they were asking because they were looking for coverage. So who knows? Okay, final word. Surfing.
Oh, relaxation. That's like my Zen moment. I love working. So to me, but when I'm in the water, you don't have to worry about my phone's not ringing because it's not on me, so I get that time to be peaceful. And you also learn how insignificant in comparison to something like the ocean, we all are, right? There's nothing I'm going to do to the ocean. And it's a good way to ground oneself, in life, right? Because I could do the biggest deal of my life last week and then, lose my second biggest account tomorrow, right? And I would be just as deflated as I was elated. So, it's a good way to just ground, myself, at least for how I operate.
Cool. I love that. Okay, let's learn a little bit more about you. You already mentioned surfing. I think that's going to be part of this answer. But when you aren't working, what do you enjoy doing?
I live in New York City, so I like to just walk around and wander into restaurants and bars and stuff and see new things. I like to travel. I'm really into just learning about things, anything. That's why I love insurance. I get to learn about all these businesses, how they operate, how they source their products, what their margins are, what their sales are. So I kind of just geek out on that stuff. When I was talking to you on one call and Tony, I just geek out on insurance. I follow all the insurtechs. I follow everything that's going in tech. A lot of stuff with that. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in Midtown. I love that. It's another good in the moment kind of thing because, you realize how bad could your day be when you started getting choked out by somebody, it puts a lot of things in perspective, and the hierarchy of respect of the time people put into a martial art like that, where to get a black belt takes 15 years at our academy, and there's all these pro fighters, and you see the amount of sacrifices they make, makes you really appreciate the amount of work ethic a fighter actually has. And it correlates in our industry because, especially in sales, you're going to get your teeth kicked in every day, or else you're doing it wrong. You have to be taking shots. So I would say that. And just, hanging out with my friends, like any other 32-year-old would do.
Yeah. Even the best fighters have crooked noses and cauliflower ears.
Yep.
If they don't, you're not doing it right. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what tools or techniques do you use to stay productive and or organized?
For sure. I mean, huge G Suite guy. You know, we use G Suite for all of our stuff. And our platform, Harbor, we have our iOS app, so it organizes my book. You know, we collaborate with our team on it and stuff like that. Like I said, we have our API call raters built into there, so I'm able to get quotes and do stuff there. But you know, just you know, we do team meetings. You know, I make my team have meetings every Monday and Friday. We do weekly performance evaluations, including myself. And you know, a good friend of mine who is a very successful startup entrepreneur recommended, you know, Ray Dalio's principles to me. So we take extreme ownership very seriously. So you know, if I do something wrong, I want to hear it. Even though I'm the CEO, like I want my team to be like, hey, you know, like we think we should do it this way. And especially with what we're doing, you know, we've been pitching our platform to so many different people all over the place. I think I had told you I recently took directorship with IAC, Big Eye of New York. I sit on their board now as of June 18th. So it's a really cool opportunity. So I'm traveling and out of the office a lot, but like, you know, we're always connected, and that's really important. So, you know, you have this super powerful tool that everybody has, you know, that is so sophisticated now, that is a smartphone that can do all these magical things for insurance brokers where, you know, yeah, it's tough, and the balancing of work life is, you know, it's difficult. I mean, personally, for me, it's a lifestyle. You know, it's 24/7. I'm always on. You know, it's like my child. I don't have any kids. My business is my child. So, you know, but I would say G Suite, we use Basecamp, Zoom as you use. We use Zoom for all of our conferencing. You know, you name it, you know, we're using it or trying it. You know, we use, you know, sophisticated phone systems that ring cell phones after hours, so you don't miss calls and stuff like that. You know, all the cool toys we have,
Cool
for sure.
toys. That's awesome. So you already hinted, you already threw out a book, but we'll add that Ray Dalio's Principles, which has been recommended by a lot of people that have come on. But have there been any other books that you found influential in your business and or personal lives?
Absolutely. My hero passed away last year, Jerry Weintraub. He was like the agent's agent and producer in Hollywood. He produced like Ocean's 11 and so many different movies. And he has an HBO special, highly recommend it. But his book's called When I Stop Talking, You Will Know I'm Dead. And he, you know, for me being in sales, the best story is that he wanted to take Elvis on tour, and he called Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, I believe his name was, and every day for 2 years. I want to take Elvis on tour. No, hang up. I want to take Elvis on tour. No, expletive, hang up. No, 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 no. Until one day Tom Parker said, come to Las Vegas with $1 million. I think it was $1 million. And the book will correct it. So I apologize if I get the number amount wrong, but it's the moral of it that matters. Get it for me, and we'll take Elvis on tour. He goes, he finds some guy in radio to source the money. He goes to Vegas. It tells a story. He goes to this bank that could only exist in Vegas at that time with a big crown. Okay. And he goes into the bank and he goes, I'm here to pick up a check for, it was $1 million, for $1 million. And the lady looked like it was crazy, 27-year-old guy, shaggy hair, jeans, the whole 9 yards. And she goes, okay, hold on. Bank manager comes out and he goes, I'm here to pick up a check for $1 million. He goes, yes, you are. And by the way, what are you using the money for? He goes, I'm going to take Elvis on tour. And he goes, well, do you need an accountant? And he goes, no, 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 we're good. He goes to Tom Parker. He goes, well, here's the money. And Tom Parker goes, well, how many shows are we going to do? He goes, I don't know. Well, what cities are we going to go to? I don't know. Well, how about you take half the money and I take half the money and we take Elvis on tour? He goes, sure. He does that. And to me, you know, that symbol of just not giving up and just working and working when you hear no's. And number one thing I can tell to any young person, old person, whatever, is no's going to be a maybe, going to be a yes. And that's why that book, he puts it in perspective. He came from nothing. He was always a hustler. And just one of those guys that you could tell when people talk about him that like lit up the room. And he was just so accomplished that at the end of the day, he revived Frank Sinatra and all these different acts and stuff. So, but he started from like bird acts and, dish throwers and, and he just knew that this is what he wanted to do. And he did not give up. Even when people, and at one point in his career, he started this, Paramount style movie house that failed. It didn't work out. And he talks about how hard it was for him to go from the top to not really the bottom, but for someone like that who had this wild success to lose that amount of money, I can only imagine what it must have. Yeah, it was the bottom, and he just did not give up. And he brought himself right back up. And if you don't have time to read the book, he's got an HBO documentary.
What is that?
Which is incredible. I think it's called hold on one second. It's called, I think it's like My Way. His Way, which is very fitting. Yeah, very, very fitting. And, you see like all these people in the very beginning of it, like George Clooney and Matt Damon, all these just, mega stars that just loved the guy because he was real too. And I think also like be authentic. That's the other thing too. Be yourself. Don't try to be someone else. Be the best you can be and compare yourself to the best you. Have a standard, right? But be the best you. I don't need to be the best Nick. He doesn't need to be the best Paul. You know what I mean? Let's just be the best, versions of ourselves. And that book does a really good job describing his life and how he got to where he was.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All I have to say is, we've been at Insurance Nerds, we're always talking about the talent gap and how difficult it is to get insurance talent into insurance. But if we can find a few more millennials like you, that will give us enough energy to supply the entire country. So hats off to you. Hats off to developing and building Diversified. I'm looking forward to following that. If someone wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Sure. I mean, you have my info, Paul at DivRisk. You can find us Diversified Risk Solutions or divrisk.com. You'll see some real cool stuff on us for our Harbor AI platform, which is our wholly owned insurance technology company that's rolling out over the next couple of weeks. It's really cool. But happy to talk to anybody. And I can tell you one thing, Nick, there are those millennials. They are there. And, they're coming, and it's a good thing for everybody. And I think that we're going to start to see the industry shift faster. It's going to be one of those things where we're going to wake up one day and all of a sudden, the industry is going to in a good way. And the people that have been in the industry for a really long time are looking for it. And I've had the fortune, I've been very fortunate to meet with some carrier CEOs and presidents, and they see the big picture. And I think that the more agencies, that provide, a little more help as far as training and more hands-on buy-in lifestyle type of jobs where, working from home to me, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but that's all a personality thing. I don't think that works for everybody. But I think that they're giving the right benefits to people. Like you see me, I was in meetings in suits all morning, but when I came back, I put a t-shirt on. We hang out in our office, but when we meet clients, we're always wearing suits and stuff like that. So yeah, for sure. They're there. They're coming, and I don't think that a lot of people give some of them, especially the older ones, and the people that are just off the technology cusp that have maintained it. And we're like, we might be older, but we're not going to let this take us by storm. So to me, age is irrelevant. It's about experience. Because I compete with people doing it for 30 years and people who've been doing it for 1 year. It's all about how good they are overall. So I don't care if you're 65 with 30 years experience or 25 with 0 experience. If you go and give it your all and try, you're going to be able to develop that individual, thing that works for you.
Can't say it better than that. My guest this week has been Paul Gagliotti of Diversified Risk Solutions. Paul, the hour flew by. Thanks so much for spending time with us, and we look forward to watching your progress.
Nick, thank you so much for your time, and Insurance Nerds, you guys, I love your stuff, and I'll continue to, and this is definitely something, regardless of me being on it, everybody should subscribe to.
I can't say it better than that. That's even better. Thanks, Paul. Until next time,
Take
everyone.
it easy, man. Have a good one.
Take care.